This is Joe Dillard, Mountain Home City Hall, talking about Bud Bodenhamer today. Bud and I go a long ways back. I was elected county judge in 1980 and took office in January of '81. And Bud was the chair of the hospital board at that time. And the hospital actually was kind of at a standstill. They had grown, but they were kind of stalled out. And back then, the county judge actually made an appointment every year to the hospital board, and that appointment had to be confirmed by the quorum court. Well, kind of speeding things up in 1981, we got a company from Texas come in and evaluate kind of where the hospital was and where we kind of give us some direction what we might do to improve it. So from that point, Bud Bodenhamer appointed 2 of the hospital board members and himself, and I appointed 3 of the quorum court members at that time, and we started meeting. And Gordon Webb, he was a district attorney then, he's now our circuit judge, but he was our legal advisor. So the hospital board, the quorum court judge and I met, and this went on for several months, probably 6 months, and we come up with a lease, and we leased the hospital to Methodist Health Systems. And this went along for several months, and Bill Anderson came on board, and but the hospital, we had to break that lease. And I remember the quorum court having to appropriate $60,000, which was a lot of money back in the early 80s for legal fees, but we won. And from that point, we set up a 501c with a self-perpetuating board. But Mr. Bodenhamer played a major role in getting the hospital to where it is today. And just a big thank you to him. He and I have hunted together, we've fished together, we've done different things together, but he was an outdoorsman. He was retired from the post office here in Mountain Home, owned a farm, and was good at raising cattle and doing farming. But he was a good community builder, and if you look at the hospital today, you can see his tracks there in the way the hospital, and from that point up until today, from the hospital has grown. And what a great facility we have, what a great drawing card the hospital is to our area. And I give Mr. Bodenhamer lots and lots of credit. He's just a great man, and we greatly miss him.
John Ahrens is my name. It was my privilege to know Bud Bodenhamer for 61 years. Bud was a citizen on the county level, on the city level, and on the national level. He graduated from high school in 1943 during the war years. Right after high school, he enlisted in the Navy, and after basic training, he was shipped to Norman, Oklahoma, where the Navy Gunnery School was. Completing that, he was shipped overseas to the Pacific Theater and flew in a Navy Douglas Dauntless dive bomber, which I have a picture of here. And he flew the rear seat top gunner, and they participated in 2 major battles and others, but the Battle of the Marianas and the Battle of the Philippine Sea. During one of these battles, they were forced to crash land on the deck of the carrier Enterprise. But talking with Bud years ago, which he never mentioned the war years much, but he would tell you about them if you asked him. That he said combat was terrifying enough, but what was really terrifying was the typhoon they went through shortly before the end of the war. That's when he said, and I'm quoting him now, he said, "That's when I really wanted to start coming home." But Bud there, to just sum it up, Bud was a citizen.
Bud Bodenhamer, when I first got to town, of course I'd met him prior to getting back here to practice law, but he was the postmaster, and of course my father-in-law was the assistant postmaster, and I knew them from that position. But Bud retired shortly after I got to town, and also retired a few years later. But we knew the Bodenhamer family, and of course Bud and Aussie had known each other for years. And my first real involvement with Bud on a just a casual basis, I got invited to go on a pheasant hunt with he and of course Aussie invited me, and it was Aussie and Bud Bodenhamer, Dr. Baker, Jay Baker, and I think Joe Dillard went with us as well. And I was kind of impressed that these older, more established guys had invited this young lawyer to go pheasant hunting. I later found out part of it was that I had a van that would haul part of the guns and stuff they needed hauled. And plus, when I got up there, I found out that there's a substance called fireweed in South Dakota. It's awful. You can't walk through it. It's awful. And it was cheaper to have me go recover the birds than to get a dog. So I was in the middle of those. And as a matter of fact, it got to be a point that when somebody would kill a bird next to that fireweed, I'd shoot it all the way to the ground to make sure I didn't have to go in there and get it. He kept saying I was weighing down his birds with lead. And it was on that trip that I learned to eat sardines. I've never been very proud of sardines, but we got up early and had breakfast, because all those guys got up early. Bud was an early riser, and everybody else there got up early, and we'd have breakfast, and we'd be waiting on the sun to come up, and you could not hunt before noon. You couldn't shoot a pheasant before noon. Well, we'd be driving around all morning looking at pheasants, doing whatever, and then noon would come, we started hunting, and we didn't stop to eat lunch. And the first day, I said, I'm hungry, and they said, well, here, and they gave me a can of sardines and some crackers. I wasn't very fond of them that day, but the second day they tasted a lot better. But I really enjoyed that trip, and Bud and I would kid about it a lot. He would always joke with me about shooting his birds after they were dead. I just said, I want to make sure they didn't run off in those fireweeds, and I have to go get it. But Bud was a cattleman. Of course, he was the postmaster here, knew everybody from that job, and he was a cattle rancher, and we shared that in common as our interest. And he was an avid hunter, probably the most avid hunter I've met, other than maybe Joe Dillard. And he really enjoyed his retirement and enjoyed his kids and grandkids. And Bob and Buster can tell you some great stories if you spend some time with them.